Now, what I'm going to do in this afternoon's talk is talk about intensive reading and then extensive reading. But in intensive reading, I'm going to be focusing on a particular type. Now, I want to show how these two different approaches can be combined and used together. That's going to be the focus of my talk this afternoon. Now, for those of you who were there this morning, you know this answer, don't you? Everybody? Okay, now, we need to get together. And this is my definition of what reading is. But before I give you mine, I want you to think what you believe reading is. See if you can answer that sentence either on paper or in your head. What is reading? Reading is... Think for a minute. What is reading? Now, if you were at my morning talk, you'll know the answer. Reading is a number of interactive processes. Interactive means back and forth, not one way, but two-way. And the two ways is between the reader and the story, and the reading, and the text. Back and forth, back and forth. Now, the readers, when they're interacting with the text, use their knowledge. Knowledge of the world, knowledge of the language, knowledge of the topic, knowledge of the author, to create, to construct, to build meaning. Okay? So this means that two readers who have different knowledge, different background, different languages will probably construct different meanings of the same text. So there is no really true meaning. There's a different type of meaning depending upon the reader. Depending on the reader. Now, I want to illustrate this with something that happened to me last May. I was in Los Angeles, and I had to cross a busy street. It reminded me of many streets in Seoul. You know, many lanes going this way, lanes going that way, full of traffic. And so I walk up and stop because it says, don't walk. Okay, good, that's easy. So I stop, and I'm standing there waiting for the sign to change. And as I'm waiting, more people come. So maybe there are about 15 or 16 of us waiting for the traffic signal to change. Remember, I'm from Hawaii, right? Life is relaxed in Hawaii. We are not like people from Seoul or people from New York or Los Angeles, busy, on the go, on the edge, right? So the light changes to this. So what do? Yes, I walk. I walk like this. And the other 15 people are like that. And I think to myself, as I am walking, I'm glad I'm from Hawaii. Right? Life is pleasant, is relaxed. We are not stressed like these people who have to rush to get to the office, who have to run to cross the street. Life is so nice in Hawaii. And as I'm doing this, I'm walking and I'm halfway through. And everybody else is over there. And I'm here. So what does that mean? I want to illustrate this idea of a single word sentence, walk. I constructed a meaning based on my knowledge of the world and everything, but the other people had a different meaning. Walk didn't mean walk, it meant run. So, the next day, there I am. First one across the street. Okay, so this is what I mean by reading is interactive processes where, depending upon our knowledge, our experiences, we create different meanings. In some cases, the meaning is not good, like my creating the meaning there. Now, reading is also magic and fun. Reading can take us to the most wonderful places. It can take us to different times, to different universes, to different cultures, and we never leave our chair. Now, psychologists who study the brain have discovered that when people are reading and enjoying the reading and get involved in the reading, they lose track. They forget where they are. They forget what time it is. They have sort of something's going on in the brain. And psychologists have attached these electrodes to the brain, and they call this a flow experience, F-L-O-W, a flow experience. There's actually different brainwave activity going on when you're involved in an activity, like a flow experience. Probably many of us have had that. All of a sudden an hour passes and we realize we're late for something. We were so excited and so involved in reading. Are your students having flow experiences in English? Korean teachers of English, are you? Okay, let's go on. How do we learn to read? How do we learn to read? We learn to read by reading. That's all. This is good news. It's not hard for us to understand. We know from research that the more reading we do, the better readers our students become. The more opportunities we give our students to engage in reading, the better readers they become. When you are talking, your students are not reading. They are not doing the single thing that will help them become readers. So what does this mean? Okay? Now, I'm going to talk about really only skills and strategies here. I'm not going to talk about these two. What I'm going to do is I want to focus on this notion of strategies. Now, you all know what grammar translation is, right? Everybody knows that. Now, there's a problem with grammar translation. Students aren't reading. There's a problem with grammar translation if you think you are teaching your students to read. You are not. You're teaching your students to translate. I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying translation is bad at all. I would never say that. Translation is translation is translation. Reading is reading is reading. They're different. So don't expect if you teach your students to translate that they're going to be able to read. No, it's different. Translation is important in Korea, in the Korean educational system, but it is not reading. Okay? Now, the next approach is called comprehension questions and language work. This is often combined with grammar translation. Students read a very short, difficult passage. Often they read it at home and translate most of the stuff, put it in Korean above it, and then they come to class and answer comprehension questions, and then they study the reading passage for linguistic or grammatical structures. Passive voice, past tense, whatever the focus of the grammar lesson is, they use the text to illustrate, to study this grammar construction. Now, this is good for building grammar knowledge. It's good for understanding this, but it is not reading. It's language analysis and language work. Students will not become readers if they do this. Now, strategy training is very different from the other two, and I want to focus on this. I want to focus on strategy training. Now, unfortunately, well, let me see. Let me go quickly here to extensive reading, and then I'll come back to strategies in a sense. Now, when we are teaching strategies, let me back up. I know that some of you are thinking a skill and a strategy. What's the difference between a skill and a strategy? Now, for my work, here's what I do. Strategies are things that we do consciously to help us do something. A strategy is conscious behavior. Okay? Let's say that we're driving here in the city and we realize there's a big traffic jam. What do? You think, well, I know that if I do this or I do this, I can get here. You're strategizing. You're thinking, what can I do I might be late, I've got to do something. So this is a strategy. Now, if you do a strategy often enough, frequently, it will start to become unconscious. It will start to become automatic, okay, without thinking. For example, when you were beginning to drive a car, if you wanted to come to a stop, you would think, oh, I've got to take my right foot off here, I've got to put it on here, press it on slowly. You think about that, right? But then when you become a skilled driver, you do these things automatically without thinking. And that's what a skill is. So we don't teach our students reading skills. We teach them reading strategies in the hope that they will become skillful readers. They will take this conscious behavior and make it automatic, unconscious behavior. Okay, so this is what I mean when I'm talking about an intensive reading strategy approach to the teaching of reading. This is important. We know from research that if students develop reading strategies, it will help them become better readers. Now, be careful what I'm saying. Better readers. How do we learn to read? By reading. Okay, now, reading strategies help us read to learn. But first, we have to learn to read. And we learn to read by reading. And that's where the extensive reading comes in. So what I've tried to do in this book that's in your packet, cover to cover, is combine the two, to merge them into a single approach, which I think is very important. So by the time your students get to cover book one, they're pretty good with learning to read. Not beginners, not advanced, but okay. So what we're trying to do is make them better readers and help them read to learn. Okay? Now, enough background here. Now what I want to do is move to something that is very, very important in becoming both a good reader and both a reader to learn. And we make a difference in reading between comprehension and fluency. Most, if not all, of the teaching of reading focuses on comprehension. And I believe that most of you probably are not aware of the idea of fluency in reading. I think you might be aware of fluency in, like oral fluency in speaking, but fluency in reading is really, really important. And this is what I want to talk about today, is how this is so important. Now, comprehension strategies are those strategies that help us get meaning from the text. That is, reading to learn, get meaning from the text. And I think there are a number of basic comprehension strategies that we as teachers need to teach our students. Okay? Finding main ideas in paragraphs. For academic reading, this is a must. Students must be able to locate main ideas in reading. So what we have to do is teach them the strategy of doing this. That's really important. Well, two things came up at once. Recognizing points of view. Critical in academic reading. What is the point of view? If it's a type of reading when there are different points of view, you've got to understand the different points of view. The other one is recognizing reference words. Recognizing reference words. What do reference words mean? They help us understand a text. When I've been teaching my students in University of Hawaii who are international students enrolled in University of Hawaii, one of the major problems they have in comprehending a passage is a lack of knowing what reference words refer to. What does this mean? What does this go to? They don't understand it. But when I teach them this, the light dawns. It's really an important strategy. Identifying meaning from context. By this, go ahead.
I really don't know what you mean by reference words.
Can anyone help him out? What is a reference word?
Would an example be something like there's an expression and then in other words and then a following expression to be explained to?
That's one way of referencing. Okay, another reference word is things like this, or that, or these, or those. Sometimes students are not aware of what these things stand for. What do they mean? What do these reference words refer to? Okay? Yeah, but pronouns are not the only reference words. Yeah. Yeah, but that's a good example of them. Yeah. Okay, good. Good. Feel free to jump in with a question. If you don't ask now, you might forget it. There might not be time. Identifying meaning from context means generally understanding vocabulary in a text. When you come to a word you don't know, what can you do? How do you identify getting the meaning of a phrase, a word, an idiom from context? Okay? This is a strategy that we teach our students. Now, fluency. Fluency. Fluency is very different from comprehension. Fluency strategies are those strategies that help students move away from word by word reading. Reading slowly is poor reading. You may think it's a good comprehension strategy to read slowly. No, it's poor. By the time students come to the end of a sentence, if they are reading word for word, they've forgotten the beginning of the sentence. So we have to teach our students to read more fluently. One good strategy is scanning. Teaching students to move their eyes rapidly through the text, looking for particular information. Really an important strategy. Another one is predicting the topic. That is, students will look at a text, look at the title, look at any pictures, quickly move their eyes through the text and predict the topic. It's a really good strategy. Skimming for the main idea, another good strategy. Ignoring unknown words. When you come to a word you don't know, skip it, keep reading. Excellent fluency strategy, not comprehension strategy. What I find when I work with teachers, they have a hard time moving away from comprehension and getting into fluency. It's a bit tricky at first. I'm going to give you a little activity that I think will maybe illustrate some of these things. Recognizing signal words. Signal words. First, next, in addition, in conclusion, also, to, T-O-O. Okay? These things are what I call signal words. They really don't carry meaning in the sense of verbs and nouns, but they help us move along through the text. And when we spot them, we know what's coming up. Something else is coming up. So recognizing signal words is an excellent fluency strategy. Now, what we know in teaching reading strategies, there are some very important things that we learn from research. Number one, we have to teach strategies in context. Just teaching a strategy and then say use it doesn't work. So what we have to do is supply the students with a reading that allows them to employ, to use the strategy. Okay? You've got to do it in context. We know that. The second thing that we know is that we have to provide an explanation, a reason, a rationale for the strategy. Why should you ignore difficult words? You want to explain that to your students. Because you don't need to know every word in the text. That's an important strategy. When we stop and look up words in a dictionary, it slows us down. And then we've got to go back and read again, and it slows us down. It takes time. I did a study in Japan a number of years ago, and I gave the treatment group a dictionary, and I gave the students in the control group, I said, don't use a dictionary. And I gave them a time, and I read it, and I timed them. And the students that used the dictionaries took twice as long as the students who didn't have access to a dictionary, and there was no difference in their comprehension scores. So the reading, the whole thing just slowed them down, took them twice as long. So this is a really important thing. Explain why a strategy is appropriate. Recycle. You know what I mean by recycle? Again and again and again. The last thing that you want to do is give a strategy to your students in context and explain it, and then practice it 1 week and forget about it. That is a sure way to guarantee the students will not use the strategy. We have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. This is from research. This is from research on strategy training. So we want to recycle it, recycle our strategies. It's very, very important to repeat it again. Now, what I want to do is demonstrate to you the importance of fluency here.